Title: How Inmates Survive Inside ADX Florence Supermax. The day the cell door closed forever. Before we dive into this dark reality, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear, you won't find anywhere else. The black SUV convoy cut through the Colorado desert under a bruised sky, dust rising behind like a funeral procession. Inside the lead vehicle sat Marcus Rain Holloway, the man the media once called the Ghost of Chicago. A former street legend, known for orchestrating criminal networks that stretched from Southside to Miami, Marcus had outsmarted police, rival gangs, and even the feds until now. His wrists were shackled. His eyes were steady. He didn't flinch when the massive steel gates of ADX Florence loomed ahead like the mouth of a beast waiting to devour him. ADX Florence, the Supermax of Supermaxes. A place designed not to rehabilitate, but to erase. Inside, even whispers were swallowed by concrete. Inmates here didn't just serve time. They disappeared from the world. Marcus was sentenced to life plus 40 years for conspiracy, murder, and racketeering. But to those who knew him, that wasn't the full story. On the outside, he'd been a strategist, someone who moved like a ghost, pulling strings that even the FBI couldn't trace. On the inside, that same mind was now locked in a 7 by 12-foot cell for 23 hours a day. The first week broke most men. Marcus wasn't most men. He memorized the sound patterns of guards' footsteps. He timed their routines, the clang of the slot door, the echo of boots on concrete. He found rhythm in repetition, turning isolation into calculation. But something inside ADX Florence didn't feel right. Every night, Marcus heard a faint tapping through the vents. 3 taps, pause, 2 more. At first, he thought it was the pipes. Then came the whispers. Inmates weren't supposed to communicate, but somehow messages traveled through the walls. Stories of men who vanished, cells that stayed empty for weeks, and guards who never returned. On the 10th day, a tray slid through his food slot. On top of the tasteless gray mush sat a folded scrap of paper. One word was written on it: wait. He didn't move for an hour, just stared at it. Who could have sent it? No one touched his food except the staff, and the cameras watched every angle. But the handwriting, it looked familiar, bold, confident. Just like his old lieutenant, Rico, a man he hadn't seen since the night everything went wrong in Chicago. That night replayed in Marcus's mind like a bad dream. The drug raid, the double-cross, the gunfire echoing through the warehouse. Rico had disappeared with millions, and the FBI had found Marcus holding the bag. He'd always believed Rico was dead. But if Rico was alive and inside Florence too, then this wasn't just a prison sentence. It was a setup. The next morning, Marcus woke to a faint scratching behind his wall. He pressed his ear to the concrete. The same rhythm. 3 taps, pause, 2. Only this time, a whisper followed, low and certain. Welcome to the game, Rain. He froze. The vent hummed, the sound fading into silence. His pulse thudded against his skull. Was Rico trying to reach him, or was this something else? As the fluorescent light flickered above him, Marcus realized one thing. Survival here wasn't just about enduring the walls. It was about figuring out who still had power inside them. And whoever sent that message knew exactly how to play him. When the guards made their rounds that night, they didn't notice the small corner of the vent had been loosened, or that Marcus Holloway had begun scratching back. Whispers through concrete. The sound of tapping returned on Marcus's second week inside ADX Florence. Steady, precise, almost musical. He had counted the pattern at least a dozen times, and by now, he knew it wasn't random. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. The rhythm of an old street code, the kind Marcus himself had invented years ago to communicate during raids. Whoever was behind that wall wasn't guessing. They knew him. Rico, Marcus muttered under his breath, his voice echoing in the claustrophobic cell. You're supposed to be dead. ADX Florence was built to break men like him. Walls of polished concrete designed to muffle every sound. No metal bars to rattle. No voices to carry. Inmates were entombed in silence, monitored by cameras and microphones 24 hours a day. But somehow, someone had found a way through the noise. That night, A small strip of toilet paper slipped through his vent. Written in tiny, rushed handwriting were the words, "I didn't betray you. They did. Stay quiet." Marcus sat back on the thin mattress, his mind racing. They? Who were they? The guards? The feds? His old crew? He remembered the trial, the prosecutor's smirk, the witnesses who flipped, the doctored evidence that sealed his fate. He had accepted prison as punishment for his crimes. But betrayal? That still burned. The next day, he began watching everything. Every meal, every sound, every flicker of shadow through the small reinforced window in his cell door. He noticed patterns. Guards rotated in specific intervals. Cameras turned slightly off-angle for seconds at a time, like someone had programmed blind spots. And the messages kept coming. Another piece of paper arrived, smuggled through a tray of food. There's a way out. Not escape, control. You know the rules. Marcus's old instincts flared. He wasn't built to obey. He was built to lead, even from a cage. By the third week, he'd mapped the guard's schedule perfectly. He had no weapons, no allies, just a mind sharp enough to cut steel. He began communicating back through the vent, tapping his replies, building a rhythm that carried across the block. One night, the tapping stopped abruptly. Then a voice whispered through the vent, hoarse, shaky, but familiar. "Rain, they found out. Don't talk to anyone. Don't even breathe loud." Marcus froze. The name Rain hadn't been spoken since Chicago. Only one man ever used it that way. "Rico," he whispered. "Where are you?" No reply. Just the hum of air circulation, cold and sterile. Hours passed. Then, faintly, a thud followed by silence. The next morning, the hallway outside his cell buzzed with tension. 2 guards wheeled a stretcher past. The body on it was covered with a white sheet. No one said a word. But Marcus didn't need to ask. He already knew. That night, his dinner tray came late. When it slid through the slot, there was another note. This one wasn't handwritten. It was printed. Clean. Official looking. "Stop asking questions, Holloway." His pulse spiked. This wasn't Rico anymore. This was the system. Someone in the prison was watching his every move, closer than any camera could. Over the next days, Marcus felt the change. His lights stayed on longer. His food tasted different. His air vent rattled with strange noises at night. Psychological warfare, the kind the prison was famous for. They wanted him to break. But Marcus wasn't the same man they'd sentenced. He started marking the wall with faint scratches, codes, times, names. A record of everything. If they wanted to erase him, he'd make sure they couldn't. Then, on his 35th day, a guard slipped and said something he shouldn't have. As Marcus's food slot closed, the man muttered quietly, "You weren't supposed to hear him. Rico wasn't supposed to exist." Marcus stepped forward, his voice low and deliberate. "What do you mean, wasn't supposed to exist?" The guard didn't answer. The footsteps faded. The silence that followed was heavier than before, suffocating. Marcus turned toward the vent, his breath visible in the cold air. Somewhere behind the walls of the world's most secure prison, someone was pulling strings, rewriting truth, erasing lives. And now Marcus realized he was next. But they had made one mistake. They'd left him alive. And a man like Marcus Holloway didn't survive. He adapted. When the lights went out that night, the tapping started again. But this time, it came from a different cell, one Marcus thought had been empty since his arrival. The man who outsmarted the walls. The lights flickered in Marcus's cell, once, twice, then went out completely. For the first time since he'd arrived at ADX Florence, the air was pitch black. No hum of fluorescent bulbs, no electric whine from the cameras. Just silence. Then came the tapping. Slow, deliberate, echoing through the walls like a heartbeat. Marcus pressed his ear to the vent. It wasn't random. It was Morse. Control is an illusion. He froze. Those were the same words he used to preach to his crew back in Chicago before everything fell apart. Whoever was sending the message knew him too well. His phrases, his patterns, his voice. Moments later, emergency lights came on. The cell glowed in dull red, casting long, ghostly shadows. The doors slot opened, and a tray slid through. No food. Just a note. They want you in Program Delta. Marcus's stomach sank. Everyone in ADX knew about Program Delta. It wasn't listed in any manual or policy, but the whispers carried through vents and pipes. Stories of prisoners taken to an underground unit for evaluation. None ever came back. He didn't sleep that night. He lay on the thin mattress, staring at the red ceiling, his mind piecing together everything. The notes, Rico's death, the guard slip-up, the surveillance changes. It wasn't paranoia. It was precision. Someone was testing him. At dawn, his cell door clicked open for the first time. 2 guards in tactical black waited outside. Delta protocol. Let's go. He walked silently, barefoot, shackled at the wrists and ankles. The hallway was long, lined with reinforced doors. Cameras followed every movement. The further they went, the colder the air became. Then they stopped at a door marked only with a number, Sublevel 3. Inside, a man in a gray suit sat behind a glass barrier. No name tag, no insignia, just a calm stare. Marcus Holloway, he said. Or should I say, Rain. Marcus didn't answer. The man smiled faintly. You built an empire that reached into every major city. You disappeared entire shipments. You used coded systems so advanced that the FBI still hasn't broken all of them. So why am I here? Marcus asked. The man leaned forward. Because someone used your system. Inside this prison. You're not the only one sending messages through the vents. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Who? The man slid a photo across the glass. It was Rico alive. But older, leaner, eyes hollow. The timestamp in the corner read 4 months ago. That's impossible, Marcus muttered. He's dead. I saw. You saw what we wanted you to see, the man interrupted. Rico's been part of an internal test. Behavioral adaptation under isolation. You were part of it too. Marcus stared, disbelief melting into fury. You turned us into lab rats. Into data, the man corrected. Every reaction, every message, every breakdown. It helps us design better containment. Smarter walls. Human-proof systems. Marcus's voice dropped, low and venomous. You think you can control people like me? The man smiled again, tapping the folder. You've already proven we can. He stood, signaling to the guards. Take him back. Phase 2 begins tonight. But Marcus wasn't broken, not yet. Back in his cell, he studied every corner, every vent, every screw. If this was a test, he would flip it. He began tapping again, this time not to communicate, but to confuse. Random rhythms, reverse codes, mixed signals. Within hours, the prison's monitoring system flooded with anomalies. Security lights strobed. Loudspeakers crackled. The control grid faltered. For 3 full minutes, ADX Florence, the most secure prison in America, went dark. When power returned, Marcus was gone. His cell door stood open, untouched. The cameras showed nothing but static. No alarms. No trace. Days later, the warden received a single envelope. Inside was a scrap of toilet paper. On it were 4 words written in pencil. Control is an illusion. The investigation that followed found no escape tunnel, no guard involvement, no breach. The official report concluded, Inmate 87291-09 deceased. Remains unrecovered. But among the prisoners, a story spread of a man who outsmarted ADX Florence. A man who vanished without breaking a single rule. They called him the ghost of the Supermax. And every night in the silence between cells, the tapping could still be heard, faint, rhythmic, defiant. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Subscribe before the lights go out.